im se svima, i malima i velikima, i bogatima i siromašnima, i slobodnjacima i robovima, dade žig na njihovu desnu ruku ili na čela njihova, te da nitko ne može ništa kupiti ili prodati.
Pozdrav dragi narode, dobrodošli u još jednu epizodu. Današnja epizoda će biti malo neobična. Neće biti tipični intervju, više diskusija. Moj današnji sugovornik je inače po profesiji arhitekt i filmski producent. Međutim, bavi se i civilnim aktivizmom, pogotovo u posljednje 3 godine. Stoga ćemo imati puno zanimljivih stvari, čuti iz njegovih usta naravno. Od sada dalje idemo na engleskom. Hello Robin, welcome to our show in Croatia.
Thank you for having me on.
Can you say 3 words about yourself and about your work?
I'm an architect and also a film producer, and I've been working more recently, I think since 2017, on a film mainly about the philosophy of medicine and the history of the doctor-patient relationship. And that has introduced me into the whole subject, and for me, because I was thinking about this issue and I was in tune with it, it was clear from March 2020 that the narrative that was given to us from all our governments was just not correct.
Well, you said it was clear from March 2020. And
yes.
How you recognize that something weird is happening?
In this film, which we did called The Book of Vision, which had executive producer Terrence Malick, the American director, and we had British actor Charles Dance from Game of Thrones in it. We explore the history of the doctor-patient relationship. And we find out that in a specific case of a doctor that we have as the main character of the film, which is based on a real doctor of the 18th century, we find that at the time the relationship between the doctor-patient was horizontal. It was not hierarchical. The doctor and the patient spoke the same language, and it was based on listening. So what happened in March 2020 is that government started telling people what to do, ordering, do this, do that. It was very hierarchical, and that already is taking everything away from what real health is, which is based on relationships, it's based on equal relationship, and it's based on fostering relationships. So the moment that it becomes about domination, it's not health. And the basic elements in the case of, let's say, respiratory illness, the basic elements would actually be to go outside and get the sun. So the moment they said stay at home, this also goes against the principles of healing. The moment they introduced fear and stress is one of the worst things for the body, for the healing, for the mind. So the moment they introduced fear, it was clear that this was not about health. So all of these elements that were brought in were actually brought in to diminish health, to diminish well-being, and to create a hierarchical situation of a government ordering people rather than a horizontal relationship, which is not only what medicine should have, but also what government should have. It should be a much more horizontal relation between government and the people. But this hierarchy that they tried to create went against all the principles of health.
Yeah, they are now calling this, now when you said principles of health, there is something what WHO now trying to implement, and it's calling One Health. And that reminds me of something, but we can come to this later. That reminds you on something. You have some experience when you investigate some other things, and this pandemic reminds you on something from the past. Can you tell us what is it?
Yeah, that's correct, because the questions often people have is, how did you come to all of this from the field that you're in, which is originally the field of architecture. So in order to explain, I think we would have to go back to 9/11. And as a practicing architect, and with some experience in that field, university teaching experience, building experience, we also did one high-rise design in the past. The analysis that was given to the people about the mode of complete destruction of the 3 towers on 9/11 in Manhattan in New York does not stand up to technical scrutiny. The official explanation by NIST is not really believable by anyone who has looked at the available evidence and the documents that are produced by my colleague Richard Gage from Architects and Engineers of 9/11 Truth in the USA. And when it comes especially to Building 7, which was not hit by any object or airplane, the mode of complete destruction of this building is in fact very in line with a series of explosions all happening a fraction of a second from each other, starting from the top, going to the bottom, so that it collapses on itself. The damage which is claimed by the NIST report, which is the damage at the bottom of the building, which is another damage that the building had, would not lead to this kind of collapse. It would lead to a collapse, let's say more similar if you imagine someone cutting down a tree from the bottom. The tree will fall, pivoting from the bottom, it will fall sideways, it will not collapse on itself. The collapse on itself indicates a series of explosions happening at a fraction of time separate from each other, but ultimately making this entire structure collapse on itself. Now, an element that here I'd like to introduce that also architects work all the time with, which I think is important to think about when it comes to what happened later. And it's the stage of technology that we are at, which is basically nanotechnology, dealing with things so small that people not only they can't see, but they can't imagine. That is the real way that they are getting away with both operations. In the case of 9/11, we can assume a nanotechnology of explosives. So we can assume, and there are some elements, there are some studies that found actually chemical elements and photos of such elements. We can, in this case, consider the possibility of an explosive called nanothermite, but it may be something else based on that. Now, when we are talking about things so small, we can create explosions that usually people would imagine created with, let's say, some kind of big bars of dynamite, you know, the ones that sort of Noble invented, or, you know, people imagine things like that. Say, oh, how can you get away with preparing such a big building when people are working on it to do such a thing like that? Well, you can do that if you use these forms of nanotechnology, and the people would not be ready for it. So it could be, let's say, painting the structure in this explosive coating. It could be something like that, something so small, but then can be ignited and it can be connected to electrical circuits that then can modulate the explosion. Now, why I'm making a link here is because we are also talking about the possibility of a degree of engineering a very, very small structure, or in a very small, let's say, biotoxin, in the case of not only what is called vaccination, but also the original, probably 2019, coming into 2020, and maybe extending into 2021, the original input of some kind of agent which is slightly different to the ones we're used to in the population. So this tends to polarize people into wanting to believe that either it was more dangerous than what it actually was, or that it didn't exist at all. And I think the polarization is fundamentally a lack of the imagination to understand how such very small elements can be engineered. So I can make an example to bring it to a different scale. Maybe it's easier to understand. So I'll show you something, for example, something that we did to give you a metaphor and a parallel. So we have here, for example, it's a project that we did for a drinking fountain in London, and we have here some models, some polystyrene models. So this is the stage at which you make something physically, right? In this case, it's a human scale, but this can be done at the scale of something which is smaller than a bacteria. So we tend to call things that are smaller than bacteria and have some kind of toxin element, we tend to call them viruses, but people get confused by that word. We don't have to call them that, but we can say something like that. What happens next? So let's say in the case of a technological operation, this would be when they will take, let's say, if it is a bat or if it is any other land, they will take some kind of toxin from some organism, they'll start studying it, and they'll start modifying this, they'll start sort of making it more infectious or something like that. So what happens next is that whatever they create goes into a computer. And the computer, it becomes a sequence of numbers. But what happens next is that you can modify this sequence, and you'll get a very slightly different toxin all the time. So this is a recipe of constantly creating different toxins in the population. They have that technology. That's what I'm trying to say. They can do it if they want to, and then it's up to the human body whether it wants to respond. In the case of our case, to make the analogy, what happens here in this image here, it's basically a machine that is cutting a lump of granite. We didn't cut it, it's the machine that cut it. It cut it based on numbers. So we can do it at a human scale. In this case, we can bring granite into a machine, put some numbers in, and it can do it. We change some numbers, it will be a slightly different shape. So that's a human scale. But all of this happens at a small scale. Why am I going into this? I'm going into this because the first thing to understand is we are at the stage of two sides of technology. One of them is the control of communication. So Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, the algorithms that control what people see and what is pushed to them. Total control of the corporate media, control of the narrative. At the same time, there is a control of a sphere of operation, which is, we can call it nanoscale. We can call it a sphere of operation of things that people cannot see, and they're even smaller than traditional electron microscopy photography usually shows. They're even smaller than the traditional formats we are even used to seeing. So this requires a degree of understanding at the stage of technology that we are at, is that it is very possible and actually relatively easy to create some biotoxins and introduce them in the population at whatever time that they want to. Now, the modes, the details and all of that, it's not necessarily what we need to get into now, but it's just to say that there are technologies and people are not ready overall. The masses are not ready to get their heads round the technologies that are available. We are at a very interesting stage in science with quantum science, when things are actually happening on layers that you don't necessarily see. So there are studies that show, for example, in forests, trees communicate to each other underground through some kind of mushroom-like organisms, and they can communicate almost instantly to each other. If there is a forest, some trees will shed leaves automatically. in communicating to trees much further down. But this can happen at a quantum level. So there are things we want to, as humans, want to be able to explain everything. But in reality, there's a lot that we still can't explain. For example, in the sun, we believe that there is a fusion reaction that is creating the heat that actually warms the planet. It's not fossil, so-called fossil fuels, which are actually hydrocarbons, which are natural from the earth. It's not that is warming the planet, it's actually the sun. We believe in a fusion reaction in the sun. But technically speaking, there is no possibility of that happening if you look at the individual reaction. It's just that the size of the sun is so big that even a small fraction of something which seems impossible scientifically becomes possible through quantum mechanics, through quantum physics, and that creates something like the sun. So we also have to understand that there's a lot that we still are not able to understand. We're just beginning to understand as a population. But people working on all of these things are always a few steps ahead. And that's where I think the imagination is important. And that's what they're also banking on, is that people see something very simple. If something is called a vaccine, it's good for you. They don't see the possibility that actually the mode of operation is not benevolent and it's intended to harm people for profit and control.
Great that you mentioned all of this, because I was thinking for a long time when I heard some sentence like, for example, when Yuval Harari said that people will be hackable human beings and free will not anymore exist. And we can, for example, know more about ourselves from the computer than we know now. Or, for example, when Klaus Schwab says that in the future we possess technology who can anticipate what people will decide on elections. And that's why maybe these questions, are we going to need any more elections, is present. And I was always asking how they can do it. And then I had the interview with Elena Freeland just a few weeks ago. And she told me something that I didn't thought of. We were talking about HARP and also about chemtrails. And she says that they are pushing this nanoscale nanobots through these chemtrails. And that we are inhaling them. And that's nanobots can go through this blood-brain barrier. And she says that her words is that they can control our feelings, emotions, and thoughts. And that's how I connected. Look, the same thing said this guy who is the advisor of Mr. Schwab, and we know that already now that lots of decisions are made there in these unelected groups who are, we can say, world government. They are trying to make, even they make a summit they're calling World Government Summit. And they are making decisions and telling us that fourth industrial revolution is in front of us. We have technology. I didn't know which kind, but now I can understand more. There is a possibility, I don't know, of course, but when I hear all this information, I can now imagine that this technology on a nanoscale, what you are mentioning, we can inhale, or they can put in us through vaccines, because lots of people are mentioning now examination that found something in vaccines. We can also discuss about that. I'm looking for somebody who can explain me in details. And now if we have some kind of this kind of technology in ours, they can manipulate with this. That's my opinion. That's my just imagination, as you said. What do you think about this?
Yeah, so we have a double manipulation. One of them is, as I said, the manipulation of technology at a scale that people cannot see and cannot understand. It's beyond their imagination. The other manipulation is the manipulation in the media. And these two are used together to create the biggest effect, to try and create the biggest effect of fear in populations. Now, as you know, we have, some of us are not interested in this fear narrative, and we are not going to go along with it. But there are a lot of people who will. So now we are in August, and we are looking at, as every year, a season in the northern hemisphere of respiratory infections, maybe other infections, probably peaking around December, January. So they can bring fear all over again, they can bring numbers all over again, especially because we're going towards a US presidential election cycle, and there's not really that many cards that Biden can use. So we are looking at almost, I think, a repeat of what happened until a couple of years ago. The agent may be different. The biotoxin, whatever it is, may be different. The effects may be slightly different. The mode of introducing it, as you said, it really is almost an unlimited number of possibilities of how this can be introduced, including through what are called vaccines. It can be in many different ways, or it can even be a self-replicating, bioengineered virus-like. It doesn't have to be a virus; it can be virus-like in the sense that it works, it replicates in living organisms. So they have a lot of possibilities. And then they have the technology to scare people all over again. So the question is, we should be, I think, prepared for this, which maybe we weren't in March 2020. I think that overall there are certain treatments and agents which tend to work against most of these, let's call them winter illnesses, artificial and natural, because they will use both and put them all in the same figure and say it's all one thing. So I think we can focus on two elements. One of them is we have spent 3 years finding out what works for our health and what prevents us from getting ill, which breaks the chain of illness. If illness between a population is like a domino, if we all look after our health and we know what to do, we will stop that domino at some stage from falling over. So that's one element. And the other element is human rights, civil rights, natural rights, God-given rights that we believe in and we fight for. We fight for almost like as an everyday occurrence. If they reintroduce masks and we go to the shop and something like that and we say, I'm not putting it on. Why are you not putting it on? It's my right. Where does it say? And then according to what country you're in, you can decide what you're going to argue is your, whether it's personal defense, legal defense, or whatever defense you want to use. But I think we're probably going to go back in a situation that we'll all have to exert daily resistance towards the propaganda manipulation and fight for it all over again. I don't think that because we can be in different groups. I don't think in the bigger amount of society at large there are really that many people who want to take the risk, put the effort in, take the societal burden of standing up to authority. I think that most people just want to go along. I think a few more people may hesitate before injecting something in their bodies. But I think probably we will very quickly see people put masks on, and very quickly people just obey to whatever the government says. And I think that's probably, we probably have to accept that we're entering a stage of two different kind of parallel societies. But I don't know, what is the feeling that you get in Croatia about this kind going into a similar thing all over again. It's difficult to gauge the numbers, you know, is it 60, 70 comply and 30 don't, 40% don't. It's difficult to know exactly how many, but I'm pretty confident that a lot of people would comply all over again, enough to put some pressure on us that we'll have to fight all over again to some degree. What do you think?
We will have now chance to find out. Now, just in the moment when we are leading this conversation, we are just entering in some new variants. They call it by number, they call it AG 5.1 or ARIS. And I was joking today on social media and read it backwards. And when you read ARIS backwards, you can find Siri. And we know that Siri is artificial intelligence of Apple. And when you also read backwards this EG 5.1, you can see 5G. And if you compare together, you can find influence on people by 5G with artificial intelligence leading. And if we know that sickness from radio waves has the same symptoms like COVID-19 or any kind of flu, it's calling this radiation sickness. It has similar symptoms, and I discussed also with some of my guests about this 5G technology, and they explained me that ICRIP, this agency, a European agency who has power to implement rules for electromagnetic waves, and they are now allow even to 300 gigahertz of waves, what is harmful definitely for people. Even much less is harmful, but they are still pushing. And they explain me they have other reasons, but now I can see if we have these connections, if we can prove, or we cannot prove, but we have indications that we can inhale something, they can put in us something through wires. Then if they use this technology with 5G, I'm not sure if they cannot do some impact on our health. But concerning Croatia, I believe, and I'm in contact with lots of people every day, and I can see on my social media, numbers are rising for people who are following me. And I'm trying to open all these topics, what we are discussing now and all others, because it seems that there is a huge picture, and we have to understand whole picture if we want to get answers for separate parts. I believe that this time in Croatia they will not succeed to make the same game like 3 years ago. They'll try. They even today or yesterday they forbid visiting a hospital, one hospital and one healthcare without masks. And I see already lots of reactions. There will be people who will take masks, but I think major part they don't believe it. And what else I have as a measure? A reaction on the social media. Now we are witnessing that all social media now pushing hard climate changes. And they are promoting on the same level. And you can see same media, same promotion, same people pushing the same thing on the same way. But you can see below this promotion, you can see reaction from the people. And I cannot find a single one who support what they are doing. I think in Croatia, really, very few people believes anymore in pandemic, especially future pandemic, in masks, in efficacy of vaccines, because nobody wants to take vaccine for already 8-9 months. We have so many vaccines on stock, and they are throwing away, and they're buying more, but they have to throw away old stocks because nobody wants to take. That's how I recognize that in Croatia, unfortunately, lots of people know what is happening. Lots of people are now becoming aware that it's connected with all these agendas, and they don't believe to our official institutions. We didn't believe in these institutions before, even, and that's our advantage. You know, we were in communism before 90s, and we will fight for our independence. There is a lot of people who lost their lives, and we now finally became independent. But also in our tradition states that we don't trust, especially in Croatia, we don't trust our government. Because during the Yugoslavia, lots of Croats didn't believe it, that it's really our government. Because there was maybe more domination from political parties, and they didn't take care of people. And we felt it. They don't care about us. Like Michael Jackson is singing. They don't care about us. And we felt that. And that's why we didn't believe to our government, even after we became independent, when we had democratic elections. But still, we don't believe the government. Why we didn't trust our government? Because it seems that this government was not our government, and they were pushing some other plans, and unfortunately, I'm feeling, I cannot prove for all of them, we prove for some of them, that they are corrupt. And believe especially today's government, they are corrupt not only with money, okay, money is one part, but with other things. Because if you have influence from outside who giving you politics for your country, and you don't asking any questions, and you just implement this politics, and you don't ask really people about their interest. For me, that's corruption, because your decisions are not according your policies. Your decision according your owners or somebody who has big influence on you. And if you are elected by the people, for the people, that shouldn't be that way. And I hope so that I'm right. I hope so that this time people in Croatia will not anymore accept any kind of measures, any kind of, for example, new emergency of international concerns. It's important to say emergency of international concerns, because that's how WHO is calling. And we'll see very soon. Now it's happening.
What about the green, in Italy they call it the green pass. I don't know if it was called the same in Croatia.
COVID passport in Croatia was.
So what if the government once again, let's say in December, on the back of strong propaganda, maybe even new symptoms, because as I said, with nanotechnology you can engineer all sorts of biotoxins to create new symptoms, different types of population, something different, something unusual, something different is introduced, and the government says, oh, we have to put the COVID Aries variant pass or something like that. And if you don't do it, we will tax your business more, we will close your bank account. So there is this basically blackmailing using taxes, using like a little bit like last time. That's a possibility of all of this developing in that way again, especially in the European Union, because they have done this association with their pass and the WHO.
That's right. That's right. They made the association. They took over. They said successful project of Green Pass. They call it successful project. Yes, that they will maybe try to implement it. But you can see this picture behind me. This picture is of the biggest protest in the history of Croatia. And this is protest against COVID passport. It was happened on 20th of November 2021. They implemented COVID passport for everybody on the 5th of November that month. And in 15 days, you can see more than 100,000 people was on the main square to say no. And this was not organized by anybody. That was organized by people, regular, normal people who were doing something else, who are not politicians, who are maybe civil activists, but not very active. They are not professionals in anything, and we didn't have any budget. You know, budget was zero. Exactly, we had money in our pockets from our businesses, and we succeed to bring so many people on the main square to say no. I'm really proud that I was member of this crowd there. And this picture, what you see behind, I took this picture because I was lucky to be on this big bus where was well, stage, some kind of stage, and I took this picture behind me, and I'm very proud of my people who were there, and I believe that we can repeat this if they try it, and also because we are a small country. Small, with inhabitants, 4 million people. There's a lots of Croatians all around the world, but 4 million people is not much. And if you know 2 or 3 people, you can find anybody. That means we know each other more or less in the same country. And I believe that they know from other side, government knows that we are capable to do the same thing again. I really would like them to try again. I really would like. But I don't think they are stupid enough to do it again, because there is elections coming. In the next 12 months we will have in Croatian parliamentary elections, we will have presidential elections, European elections, and at the end, year after that, not year, half a year after that, will be local elections. And that's why I think they will not do it for the next few months, because in any case they don't want this kind of situation on the street anymore. But we have to be very careful, because we know that these decisions are not made in Croatia. These decisions are made maybe in European Commission or even further away. For example, in this World Economic Forum or the World Government Summit, or this maybe Trilaterala or Club of Rome, or all these United Nations, all these acronyms, you know. When we call this something with acronym, then you know it's against people. Maybe they will push it. I think that we are spending more money than we earn already for 20-something years. And we are a small country with big debts. And people who have these strings behind, they have big influence on our money, on our debts. And we are now in the Eurozone. That means from this year we're using euro. That means we don't have any influence on our currency. With these tools, they can press our government to do some things. As I repeat again, I would like to, but we'll see.
Okay. So let me then just ask you, this is quite inspiring for people in other countries, for which maybe they weren't communist countries. So people used to trust their government, believe it or not. They used to believe, and people still do believe, that people are trying their best for their own good and for their own health. So it's quite inspiring to hear this story from Croatia, I think, for the public in the UK, in the US. because we've seen protests in Canada, in New Zealand, which is part of a film that I helped to produce called River of Freedom, coming soon, about the protest movement in New Zealand. But overall, there's a big percentage of people who still get the news from the government and still believe it. What happened in Croatia? So they tried to do this COVID pass. In the space of, you said, that, like, you know, a couple of weeks, you had hundreds of thousands of people basically saying no. And so it did not go ahead.
Well, they did go ahead, but they stopped because they had a plan to implement vaccine mandates. They had a plan from the 1st of December 2021, in a moment when Austria was deciding for another lockdown. Our president of the parliament says that they will think over it. That means they will do it from the 1st of December, another lockdown, and they already decided that from the 1st of January 2022, there will be possibility to go only case if you are vaccinated and tested. That means if you had a COVID, you were not allowed to go anywhere. And that was main sign that they are planning to mandate vaccination. And also I have some information from inside. They had paper on the table ready to mandate vaccination. But they quit. They decided not to go to it. And that was our big success. And also, I have to add to this, I saw protests in New Zealand, I saw in Canada, United States, in Great Britain, France especially, Germany. And I can say that in Croatia, there was no single drop of blood in these protests. You know, it's very important. We didn't drop any blood. It was tough. It was hard to suffer through this because lots of people lost business. I completely lost my business because I couldn't work for 2 times for a few months. And I had kids in university and I had to pay everything, and you cannot make any business. But anyhow, we didn't drop a drop of blood, what I'm proud of. And lots of people around me, my colleagues, my friends, notice that we succeed because, you know, we know what is losing life. We remember what was 25 years ago, exactly 23 years ago. We had a war. I lost lots of my friends in this war. I was volunteer. I was in the war for a long time and almost died. And I know how when somebody die in your hand, your friend, young one, with 21 years old or 24 years old. I know how it feels when you come to his mother or to his daughter and say, look, your father died for this country. We don't want to this happen again. We lost too many young lives during the war, and that's why we succeed. I believe we succeed to push back our government and everything without dropping a single drop of blood. I'm repeating this all the time because it's very important.
So that would mean that the police was not violent on the protests?
Absolutely not. I have to say, because I was in the middle of this happening and I was in contact with lots of people, and lots of policemen were during the civilian part, when they are not in the work, they come to this protest. You know, during the protest, they are there as a policeman. When they finish their shift, they go home, change their clothes, and come to the protest. And we were there. We knew that, and that's how I knew that for sure there will be no violence from side of police.
Yeah, in a way, this confirms something I said in January 2021, which is we almost seeing a reversal in let's say if you call it Eastern Europe or Western Europe, which is the part of Eastern Europe that remembers a more sort of oppressive government, is more ready to not believe the official narrative and stand up for itself. Whereas we have a lot of sort of more naive people in Western Europe and North America that instead will just still believe anything. So what used to be maybe once the Iron Curtain that separated a more free bloc to a less free bloc, now it seems to me we're going towards the other way around. By listening to you, I don't think they'll be able to pull it off in Croatia, but in places like the UK, they'll ignore, 100,000 people in the street, they'll ignore it. They'll send a policeman to be violent with no hesitation. You've seen in Paris where the policeman will fire bullets, rubber bullets on the yellow vest protesters, and the majority of people are kind of ignoring all of that. And so I think we are almost going towards this separation that I could see coming, where maybe a lot of people will need to go to Eastern Europe to find freedom because the other people in their countries are not able to see the fraud in this operation still, or not enough. Now, I'm hoping it won't be like that. I'm hoping that a lot of people will wake up in Western Europe as well. But I think a lot of people don't, because all of their lives, they believe the TV, they believe the politicians, they believe the authorities, and they're just not ready to disbelieve. Maybe the new generation who's growing up now, who has a sense there's something quite wrong, maybe as they come of age, they will be already maybe like what Croatians are today, which they don't necessarily believe what is being told to. So I wonder whether it would be a situation like in the US, that people left the more oppressive states to go to the more freedom states. There's been like an internal displacement and an immigration of people to places where they could be more free. I wonder whether that could be going to be happening in the European Union as well, because, as we said, the European Commission doesn't seem to have any intention to listen to the people, and it will just implement decisions that are effectively made in Davos and even more remote places where these decisions are basically made, and probably were made a long time ago.
Yes, maybe we can add to this. There is one important sentence, I heard it already before, that weak man builds bad times. Bad times builds a strong man. Then a strong man build good times. Then again, good times build weak men. Now it seems to that in a Western world, there will be very nice time, good times for already 70 years after Second World War. And now it seems to that this new generation didn't felt any hard suffer. In case of Croatia, we suffered hard during 90s, beginning of 90s, really hard. Third of our country was occupied, and lots of refugees, thousands of deaths, and also it was war in Bosnia all the time. There is a big community of Croatians in Bosnia. We suffer at the same time, and we remember this time. We are generations who suffered. During my early 20s, I didn't have a chance to travel around the world and to do things what normally somebody with 20, 21, 22 years old. I was pressed to go in the war, and after that change my life completely. And lots of people are witnessing this. That's why we are a generation who has to be strong. We didn't have any chance to be weak, because in that case we will lose the war. And that's how maybe we'll now bring back and build something strong, something good, because we remember bad days. And unfortunately in the West, or unfortunately in the West, well, you had a really great time for 70 years, and now you have to change it. You have to do something to fight again for your freedom. Somebody told me, I think yesterday, that now this is our Normandia, you know. This time is now Normandia fight, you know, for freedom of Europe. When we, somebody told me that, and this sounds interesting.
Yeah, you know, I remember the 1970s in, let's say, in Rome, in Italy, and sometimes I talk to people who remember it too. Say if they tried this in the 1970s in a place like Italy, they wouldn't have got very far. It was only 30 years from the war, which was obviously fought in Italy as well, and they wouldn't have got very far at all. Now instead, it's, as you say, it's the other way around. What I'm hoping is that maybe a few people who were on the sidelines 3 years ago because they weren't ready, what I'm hoping is that they're out there now, and when they try it again this time, they will be standing up, which maybe they didn't do 3 years ago. And as I said, this standing up is really has to happen at a micro level. It has to happen at a daily life level, which it seems to me in Croatia, as you said, you already have it. So I think that was why it was interesting for me to talk to you, because I think this is useful for people who maybe listened to me in the UK or maybe in the USA to hear this and to realize that actually it's kind of up to us what's going to happen, and it's kind of up to the few people who are willing, at least in the West, who are willing to talk and to stand up. I understand also there is your Croatian member of the European Parliament, right, that is very vocal about this, and now I understand also why he's one of the few. Is this correct?
That's right. Two of them, Mislav Kolakušić and Ivan Vilibor Sinčić. And when you see that in loudest 5, there is one Italian, one German, one Romanian, and 2 Croatians in 5 of them. And we are the smallest country. I think that is because we figure out very early what is happening, and that's why we fight. For sure that we have to not hope, we have to act now. What you are doing there is something that everybody has to do it. And same thing are helping this. We have to fight again for our freedom, because very soon we will not have more chance to do it. Very soon, as you mentioned, technology, as you mentioned already, how they can do it. I'm trying to investigate and connect lots of people to find knowledge about this, because that's the way how we can explain to people how they're going to do it. And we have to stop them, because very soon we will not have new chance. And new generations, even our kids, will forget how it looks like to have a freedom of speech, freedom of traveling, freedom even of doing private things. Freedom to have a family, for example, if they don't decide to give you enough carbon credit. I think we have to fight for that. It's
great to talk to you. I think it's very inspiring for people to hear about the case of Croatia, and it's a reminder for, I think, all of us to bring out what we have within us, because I think the tragic example that you bring also of Croatia is that in the current situation, if we don't fight in an everyday way today, the fight can get much worse. It can get violent. It can get more dangerous for everyone. So I think now that we have an opportunity to do it peacefully, day by day, in everyday life, at least we still have this opportunity to do it. This is when we need to really take it, because when people sit on the sidelines, they can help a situation get a lot worse. So it's inspiring to see that courage at the beginning of this path towards a kind of control system, a kind of totalitarian, technological technocratic dictatorship, courage at the beginning can avoid violent situations much later. So it's important for everyone to bring this courage out like Croatians did. So thank you for talking to me and explaining something, and I hope it will inspire a lot of people to do whatever they can and to use their voices and to at least try and give a different narrative every day whenever they can to the people around them.
Thank you, Robin, and thank you for your time, and keep fighting. We'll win this war.
Thank you. And you too. It's great to work together on this and to inspire each other.
Evo, dragi narode, mislim da sam u današnjoj emisiji više nego dovoljno govorio, stoga za zaključnu riječ je samo da nećemo odustati, što se kaže, spalili smo brodove, a to dolazi od onog čuvenog pohoda na Južnu Ameriku i kada nisu znali što da naprave, spalili bi im brodove tako da znaju da nema povlačenja. Tako smo i mi spalili brodove i nećemo stati dok ne pobjedimo, dok ponovo ne steknemo svoju slobodu za koju smo skrvo se borili još 90-ih, a očigledno neki planiraju da nam to uzmu, evo, polako na tehnološki način, ali nećemo im to dozvoliti. Hvala vam lijepo na vremenu, na strpljenju i vidimo se u idućoj epizodi.
Nitko vas neće natjerati da se poklonite zvijeri, učinit ćete to svoje voljno, odbacujući vjeru. Bićete laka meta za zvijer, jer se niste podredili vjeri. Ako se ne podredite vjeri, podredit ćete se zvijeri. Toliko ćete se suobličiti sa ovim svijetom, da nećete ni prepoznati da ste u zabludi. Biće to najveća demonska prevara ikada i pravedno zaslužena osuda nad nepokajanim grešnicima.
Gdje su svi?